Commander Vextar limped into the Grand Council chamber on Zephyria Prime. His mechanical leg clicked against the polished floor with each step. The sound echoed in the vast room where the most powerful beings in the galaxy gathered to make decisions that affected billions of lives. The Krillian veteran had seen more battles than most of the council members combined. His body showed the cost of those fights. Where his left arm should be, metal cables and servos moved in its place. 3 deep scars ran across his face, souvenirs from plasma burns that had nearly killed him. His exoskeleton, once the pride of Krillian engineering, was now a patchwork of repairs and replacements. But none of that mattered to the council. They saw him as just another old soldier telling war stories. Vextar stopped in the center of the room and looked up at the 12 seats arranged in a perfect circle above him. Each seat held a representative of the most advanced species in the galaxy. The Zentarian Hegemarch sat in his golden throne, his 4 arms crossed in obvious boredom. The Void Singers floated in their containment sphere, their collective consciousness humming with impatience. The crystalline form of the Nixari delegate reflected the chamber's lights in patterns that showed their annoyance. "Honored council members," Vextar began, his voice steady despite the pain in his chest. "I come before you today to speak about the humans of Earth. We must not underestimate them. They are not like other species we have encountered." A sound like grinding metal came from the Hegemarch's direction. It was laughter, though few species would recognize it as such. "Commander, you have served the Coalition well. Your record shows bravery in battle, but perhaps your injuries have affected your judgment." Other council members made their own sounds of agreement. The Void Singer's humming grew louder, which meant they found something amusing. The insect-like hive queen clicked her mandibles in what passed for a chuckle among her kind. Vextar had expected this reaction, but it still frustrated him. These beings had never fought humans. They had never seen what he had seen. 3 years ago, Vextar continued, you sent me with the enforcement fleet to the Kepler 442 system. It was supposed to be a simple operation. The humans had mining claims there, but they had no legal right to that territory under Coalition law. We expected them to withdraw when they saw our ships. The Nixari delegate's crystalline form shifted colors from blue to green, indicating interest. "Yes, we remember that operation. It was successful. Was it not? The humans retreated, and we took control of the mining stations." "Successful?" Vextar's voice rose slightly. "We lost 600 ships. 600! Against an enemy that should not have been able to damage even one of our vessels." The council chamber fell silent for a moment. The Hegemarch leaned forward in his throne. "You exaggerate, Commander. The reports show losses, yes, but they were acceptable given the tactical situation." "Acceptable?" Vextar felt his anger rising, but he forced himself to stay calm. "Hegemarch, with respect, you were not there. You did not see what those humans did to our fleet." The Hive Queen spoke for the first time, her voice a series of clicks and chirps that the chamber's translators converted to words. "Tell us then, Commander. What did these primitive humans do that was so impressive?" Vextar closed his eyes for a moment, remembering. The images were still clear in his mind, even after 3 years. They turned their ships into weapons. Not just their guns and missiles. The ships themselves, when they were losing, they rammed their vessels into ours. I watched a human captain pilot his burning ship directly into the engine core of a Coalition cruiser. Both ships were destroyed, but the human saved 2 of his escort vessels by doing it. Desperation tactics. The Void Singers hummed in unison. Many species fight recklessly when facing extinction. No. Vextar shook his head. This was not desperation. It was calculation. Every human ship that sacrificed itself did so to achieve a specific tactical goal. They were not panicking, they were thinking. He paused, gathering his thoughts. How could he make them understand? During the battle, I monitored their communications. Do you know what I heard? Not screaming or panic. They were making jokes. In the middle of combat, with their ships exploding around them, They were laughing and making jokes about our tactics. The chamber was quiet again. The council members exchanged glances, some confused, others skeptical. Vextar pressed on. One human boarding party managed to get onto my ship. We killed most of them. But 3 made it to our engineering section. Their life support had failed, and they were breathing toxic air. By all logic, they should have been dead within minutes. Instead, they fought for 20 minutes, while jury-rigging our own reactor into a bomb. If my security team had not stopped them, they would have destroyed my entire ship just to take out one coalition vessel. The Hegemarch waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. You described the actions of a dying species, Commander. Desperate creatures will do desperate things. It means nothing. It means everything. Vextar's voice echoed through the chamber. You still do not understand. The humans we fought were not their best warriors. They were miners and traders. Civilians with basic military training. Their ships were old and poorly armed. And they still inflicted losses on us that no other species has ever achieved. The crystalline Nexari delegate pulsed with orange light, indicating deep thought. What are you suggesting, Commander? That we should fear a species that has not even left their home star system? I am suggesting, Vextar said carefully, that we should negotiate with them. Find a peaceful solution, because if we fight them on their home ground, with time to prepare, we will not survive the encounter. The council chamber erupted in sounds of disbelief and anger. The Hegemarch stood from his throne, his golden armor clanking. Enough. Commander Vextar, your service to the Coalition is noted and appreciated. But you have clearly been traumatized by your experience. We will not be intimidated by a species that barely understands space travel. The vote is clear, announced the Hive Queen. Operation Terran Subjugation will proceed as planned. The humans will submit to Coalition authority or face the consequences. Vextar felt something cold settle in his chest. He had failed. These powerful beings, for all their intelligence and technology, could not see the truth that was right in front of them. They were about to wake up something that would change the galaxy forever. As you wish, he said quietly. But remember this moment when our ships start burning around Earth. Remember that someone tried to warn you. As the council members began discussing invasion plans, Vextar turned and walked toward the exit. His mechanical leg clicked against the floor, marking each step toward what he knew would be a disaster of unimaginable proportions. The humans had 3 years to prepare. 3 years to study Coalition technology and tactics. 3 years to plan their defense. Vextar had seen what they could do with no preparation at all. The thought of facing them when they were ready terrified him more than any battle he had ever fought. 3 years earlier, the Kepler 442 system had seemed like such a simple assignment. Vextar remembered standing on the bridge of the Coalition flagship, looking at the tactical display with confidence. 12 Coalition vessels against 3 human ships. It should have been over before it began. The human ships looked like scrap metal held together with hope and determination. Their hulls were rough, covered in patches and welds that spoke of constant repair. Their weapons were primitive projectile systems instead of proper energy weapons. Their shields flickered and sparked like failing electronics. Pathetic, Admiral Korvash had muttered, his reptilian features twisted in disdain. Are we sure these creatures even qualify as spacefaring? Those ships look like they might fall apart if we fire a warning shot. Vex's Tar had agreed at the time. The humans had sent a simple message in response to the Coalition's demands. Negative. These are our mining claims under salvage law. We will not withdraw. No threats. No posturing. No attempt to negotiate. Just a flat refusal. Open fire, Admiral Korvash ordered. Disable their engines. We will board them and explain proper galactic law. The first volley of energy beams lanced out toward the human ships. The Coalition expected to see their shields collapse and their engines go dark. Instead, something impossible happened. The human ships scattered in 3 different directions, each moving in a pattern that made no tactical sense. One ship flew directly toward the Coalition fleet. Another dove toward the system's asteroid field. The third began spinning end over end, while firing its primitive weapons in seemingly random directions. What are they doing? Admiral Corvash demanded. His tactical officer, a young Centaurian, stared at his displays in confusion. I do not know, sir. Their movements violate all standard combat protocols. They should be maintaining formation and focusing their fire. That was when Vextar learned his first lesson about humans. They did not follow standard protocols. The spinning human ship was not firing randomly. Every shot was calculated to hit specific points on the Coalition vessels. Their primitive projectile weapons punched through energy shields like they were not there. The metal slugs struck navigation sensors, communication arrays, and weapon targeting systems with surgical precision. The ship diving toward the asteroid field was not retreating. It was using the rocks as cover, appearing and disappearing behind massive boulders while taking shots at Coalition engines. Somehow, the human pilot was navigating through the debris field at speeds that should have been impossible. But it was the third ship, the one flying directly at the Coalition fleet, that taught Vextar the most important lesson about humanity. Sir, the tactical officer called out, his voice rising in panic. That human vessel is on a collision course with the Nexus Prime. They are not responding to our warnings, Admiral Corvash laughed. Foolish creatures. Do they think they can damage a Coalition dreadnought with a ramming attack? Focus fire on that ship. Destroy it before it can. The human ship exploded just as it reached the Nexus Prime. But the explosion was not from Coalition weapons. The humans had deliberately overloaded their own reactor, turning their ship into a massive bomb. The blast ripped through the dreadnought's forward sections, crippling its main weapons and killing hundreds of Coalition crew members. Impossible, Admiral Corvash whispered. No species commits suicide in combat. It serves no tactical purpose, but Vextar was studying the tactical display, and he could see the truth. The human ship had not committed suicide. It had made a trade. One small vessel for one large vessel. But more than that, the destruction of the Nexus Prime had forced the other Coalition ships to change formation to avoid the debris. That gave the remaining two human ships better firing positions, and they were using those positions with deadly efficiency. The spinning human ship had stopped spinning and was now flying in a straight line toward the Coalition's second-largest vessel. But it was not another suicide run. Instead, the ship opened its cargo bay and released dozens of mining charges into space. Asteroid mining explosives, Vextar realized aloud. They are using civilian equipment as weapons. The charges detonated in a pattern around the Coalition ship, not causing much direct damage but creating a field of debris and electromagnetic interference. The Coalition vessel's sensors went blind just as the third human ship emerged from the asteroid field behind it. What happened next would stay with Vextar for the rest of his life. The human ship did not fire weapons. Instead, it extended mechanical arms from its hull. Mining equipment, designed for cutting through asteroid rock, began carving into the Coalition vessel's hull like it was soft clay. The humans had turned industrial tools into boarding equipment. They are cutting through our armor plating, the tactical officer reported, his voice filled with disbelief. How are they doing this? Our hull is made of enhanced duralloy. Admiral Corvash slammed his fist against his command chair. All ships, converge on that vessel. Stop them before they breach our hull. But the humans had planned for this too. As Coalition ships moved to help their damaged vessel, the remaining human ship released clouds of metallic chaff into space. The tiny particles scattered Coalition sensors and made target locks impossible. Energy weapons fired blindly, hitting nothing but empty space. Then Vextar heard something that chilled him to his core. Human voices, coming over the open communication channels. But they were not screaming or panicking. They were singing. What is that sound? Admiral Corvash demanded. It appears to be a human war song, sir, the communications officer reported. They are broadcasting it on all frequencies. The singing continued as human boarding parties cut their way into Coalition ships. Vextar watched his tactical display as red alerts appeared across multiple vessels. The humans were inside Coalition hulls, fighting in the corridors and engineering sections. But these were not soldiers. The Coalition intelligence files said the humans in this system were miners and support personnel, civilians. Yet they fought with a coordination and ferocity that surpassed elite military units. "Sir," Vextar's own security chief called over the comm, "we have human intruders in Engineering Section 7. 3 individuals. They have taken hostages and are threatening to overload our reactor." 3? Vextar could not believe it. "Send 20 guards. Eliminate them immediately." 20 minutes later, the security chief called back. His voice was shaken. "Sir, we have stopped them. But barely. They killed 8 of my people and wounded 6 more. And sir, their life support failed 10 minutes into the fight. They were breathing our atmospheric mix, which is toxic to their species. They should have been unconscious within minutes, but they kept fighting until we killed them." The battle continued for 3 more hours. By the end, the coalition had technically won. The human ships were destroyed or disabled, and the mining stations were captured. But the cost had been terrible. 600 coalition personnel dead, 4 ships crippled beyond repair, 8 more ships damaged so badly they needed months of work before they could fight again. And all of this against 3 mining vessels crewed by civilians. As Vextar looked at the aftermath, floating in space around him, he realized something that would haunt his dreams. The humans had not been trying to win this battle. They had been learning. Every move they made, every tactic they used, was designed to teach them how coalition ships and weapons worked. They had turned their own destruction into a research project. And somewhere in space, beyond the range of coalition sensors, Vextar was certain that other human ships had been watching, recording everything that happened. The galaxy had just given humanity a very expensive education in interstellar warfare. Vextar had the terrible feeling that they would put that knowledge to good use. The massive fleet assembly at Proxima Station was the largest military gathering in galactic history. Vextar stood at the observation deck, watching as ships from 12 different species arranged themselves in perfect formations. 10,000 vessels stretched across space like a metal constellation, dreadnoughts the size of small moons, cruiser squadrons that could glass entire planets, and fighter wings that numbered in the hundreds of thousands. It should have been an inspiring sight. Instead, it filled Vextar with dread. "Magnificent, is it not?" Admiral Korvash approached from behind, his scaled features showing satisfaction. The reptilian commander had been promoted after the Kepler incident, despite the losses. "The humans will surrender the moment they see this fleet. No species could stand against such power." Vextar turned to face the admiral. "Sir, I request permission to present new intelligence about human capabilities." Korvash's eyes narrowed. "Commander, the Council has made their decision. Your concerns have been noted and dismissed. We will not waste time on the fears of one traumatized veteran. Please, sir, just look at this data." Vextar activated his personal display, showing a series of intercepted transmissions and sensor readings. Human activity has increased dramatically in the past 3 years. They have launched thousands of ships throughout their system. Construction projects on every planet and moon. Energy readings that suggest massive industrial expansion. The Admiral glanced at the display with little interest. "So? A primitive species trying to build defenses. It makes no difference. They could have 1,000,000 ships, and it would not matter against coalition technology. Sir, these energy readings are not consistent with primitive technology." Vextar highlighted specific data points. "Look at these quantum signatures. These are coalition standard shield generators. This spectral analysis shows weapons that match our energy output patterns. They have reverse-engineered our technology." For the first time, Korvash looked genuinely at the data. His expression shifted from boredom to confusion. "This cannot be accurate. It takes centuries for a species to develop this level of technology. Humans have had access to coalition equipment for only 3 years. 3 years in which they dissected every piece of wreckage from Kepler 442, Vextar said quietly. "Sir, humans do not learn like other species. They do not spend decades studying theory and running simulations. They take things apart and rebuild them better. It is how their species evolved." Korvash waved a dismissive hand. Even if this data is correct, what does it matter? They are still one system against the combined might of the galaxy. Numbers will tell. Vextar pulled up another display. Sir, we have intercepted thousands of human communications in the past month. Usually, when a species faces extinction, their transmissions show panic, political fighting, and social breakdown. Look at what we are seeing from Earth. The display showed a complex analysis of communication patterns, energy usage, and population movements across human space. Korvash studied it for a moment, his confusion deepening. Where are the regional governments? Where are the military commands arguing about strategy? This data suggests unity. Vextar finished. Complete unity. Every human government has merged into a single command structure. Every human military has been integrated into one force. Every human research facility is sharing data in real time. In 3 years, they have achieved something that most species require millennia to accomplish. The Admiral stared at the display. This is impossible. No species unifies this quickly. There are always holdouts, political disputes, regional interests. Not when facing extinction, Vextar said. Sir, I have studied human history since Kepler 442. This species has a pattern. When faced with an external threat, they stop fighting each other and focus entirely on the enemy. It is an evolutionary trait. They become more dangerous when cornered. Korvash turned away from the display, clearly uncomfortable with what he was seeing. Your analysis is interesting, Commander. But it changes nothing. We have the largest fleet in galactic history. They have one star system. Sir, there is more. Vextar activated another screen. We have detected references to something called Project Damocles in human communications. Our linguists cannot determine what it means, but it appears to be their primary military initiative. A weapon system, no doubt. Every species tries to build a super weapon when facing superior forces. It never makes a difference. Perhaps. But there is something else that troubles me. Vextar brought up a series of intercepted messages. Human transmissions frequently reference something they call the Geneva suggestion. Our cultural experts are baffled by this term. It appears to relate to their rules of warfare. Korvash laughed, a harsh sound like grinding stones. Rules of warfare? You saw how they fought at Kepler. They have no rules. That is what concerns me, sir. Vextar's voice was quiet. I have studied human history extensively. Geneva was a treaty that limited their weapons and tactics during their pre-space wars. When they call it a suggestion, rather than a requirement, the Admiral's laughter died as he understood the implication. You think they are planning to abandon their own rules of engagement? Sir, at Kepler 442, those humans were miners and traders following their normal ethical guidelines. They still inflicted massive casualties on us. If they abandon those restrictions entirely, Korvash stared out at the assembled fleet, his confidence visibly shaken. Even so, Commander, look at this force. 10,000 ships, the finest technology in the galaxy, crews trained for decades in space combat. How could one species, trapped in one system, possibly stand against this? Vextar followed his gaze to the magnificent fleet. Dreadnoughts bristling with weapons, carrier groups surrounded by defensive formations, support vessels providing logistics for the largest military operation in history. It was impressive. It was overwhelming. It was exactly the kind of target that humans would find irresistible. Sir, Vextar said slowly, what if they are not trapped in their system? What if they want us to come to them? Creeded Armand. What if they want us to come to them? What if they want us to come to them? Creeded Armand. Creeded Armand. The question hung in the air between them. Out in space, the fleet continued its preparations, unaware of the discussion taking place on the observation deck. Korvash shook his head firmly. No, Commander. I will not be frightened by ghost stories and theoretical analysis. This fleet will jump to the Sol system in 6 hours. The humans will surrender or be destroyed. Either way, this threat to coalition authority will be ended. As the admiral walked away, Vex-Tar remained at the observation window. He thought about the intercepted human transmissions he had not shared with Corvash. Messages that spoke of readiness. Messages that expressed not fear or desperation, but anticipation. The humans were not just prepared for this invasion. They were looking forward to it. In 6 hours, the coalition fleet would jump to Sol System expecting to find a cornered, desperate species ready to surrender. Instead, Vex-Tar was certain they would find something that would fundamentally change the balance of power in the galaxy. He had tried to warn them. He had shown them the evidence. But sometimes, the only way to learn a lesson is through pain. And the coalition was about to receive a very painful education about what happened when apex predators decided to stop hiding their true nature. The coalition fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Sol System in perfect formation. 10,000 ships arranged in attack groups, ready to demonstrate galactic superiority to these upstart humans. Vex-Tar stood on the bridge of Admiral Corvash's flagship, watching the tactical displays as the sensor sweeps began. What they found was nothing. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, his voice confused. "The system appears to be empty." "Define empty," Corvash demanded, moving to stand beside the main display. "No ship signatures, sir. No active energy sources except for automated distress beacons. Earth and its colonies are broadcasting emergency signals requesting assistance. But we detect no defensive formations." "Are many?" Vex-Tar felt ice forming in his stomach. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. "Sir, request permission to suggest extreme caution. This does not match human behavior patterns." "Nonsense," Corvash snapped. "They saw our fleet and ran." "Cowards. Begin the advance. We will accept their surrender from Earth orbit." The massive coalition fleet began moving into Sol System, dreadnoughts in the lead, cruiser formations flanking them, fighter wings spread wide to prevent any escape attempts. It should have been a moment of triumph. Instead, Vex-Tar found himself checking weapon systems and shield status compulsively. They passed Mars' orbit without incident. The red planet showed signs of hasty evacuation, with industrial complexes still running but no personnel signatures. Jupiter loomed ahead, its massive bulk surrounded by what appeared to be abandoned mining platforms and research stations. "This is too easy," Vex-Tar muttered to himself. That was when the trap was sprung. The first sign was the asteroids. What the coalition sensors had read as lifeless chunks of rock suddenly blazed with energy signatures as hidden weapons platforms came online. Hundreds of them, scattered throughout the asteroid belt, each one bristling with weapons that made coalition fire look primitive. "Contact!" the tactical officer screamed. Multiple energy sources activating throughout the system. The space between the planets erupted with light, as ships that had been running completely cold suddenly powered up their engines and weapons. They had been there all along, floating silent and invisible, waiting for the coalition fleet to move into range. But these were not the crude mining vessels from Kepler 442. These were sleek, deadly warships that combined the best of coalition technology with human improvements. Their hulls were angular and aggressive, their weapon arrays glowing with barely contained energy. "Impossible," Corvash breathed. "How many ships do they have?" The answer came as more human vessels revealed themselves. They had been hiding behind Jupiter's moons, concealed in Saturn's rings, lurking in the shadow of every planetary body in the system. As each group powered up, the tactical display showed a terrifying truth. The humans had not just built a fleet to match the coalition. They had built a fleet specifically designed to destroy it. "Sir," the communications officer called out. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet." "Put it through," Corvash ordered, his voice tight with stress. The main screen flickered and resolved into the image of a human female in a crisp military uniform. She was young by human standards, with short, dark hair and eyes that held no fear, only cold calculation. "I am Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force," she said, her voice calm and professional. "You are trespassing in sovereign human space. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal procedures." or we will consider your presence an act of war." Korvash stepped forward, his scales bristling with anger. "I am Admiral Korvash of the Coalition Fleet. You will surrender immediately, or face complete destruction. You cannot match our firepower." Admiral Chen's expression did not change. 20 seconds. "You are outnumbered," Korvash roared. "We have 10,000 ships." 15 seconds. The human admiral seemed almost bored. "I should mention that you are currently surrounded. Please look at your tactical displays." Vex Tar was already looking, and what he saw made his blood run cold. The human ships were not arranged in defensive formations around Earth. They were positioned in a perfect sphere around the Coalition fleet. Every escape route was covered. Every angle of attack was blocked. The Coalition had flown directly into the center of a massive trap. 10 seconds, Admiral Chen continued. "Final warning." Korvash snarled and turned to his weapons officer. "Open fire. All ships, engage at will." 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Admiral Chen nodded slightly. "Thank you for making this easy." The space around Sol System exploded into violence unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships did not fire wildly like desperate defenders. They fired with precision that seemed impossible. Every shot was calculated. Every target selected for maximum tactical impact. Coalition ships found their shields overwhelmed not by brute force, but by weapons that had been specifically designed to counter Coalition technology. "They know our shield frequencies," the tactical officer shouted over the alarms. "They are modulating their weapons to punch right through our defenses." But that was only the beginning of the Coalition's nightmare. The asteroids that had revealed themselves as weapons platforms were not firing conventional weapons. They were launching clouds of what appeared to be metallic dust into space. "Sir, that dust is interfering with our targeting systems," the weapons officer reported. "We cannot maintain locks on the human ships." Meanwhile, the human vessels were moving in patterns that defied understanding. They fought as individual units, but somehow maintained perfect coordination. When one ship was damaged, 2 others would immediately move to cover it. When a group of Coalition vessels focused fire on a single target, the humans would abandon that ship and concentrate their own fire on the Coalition ships, trading one vessel for 3 or 4. But the most terrifying thing was how methodically they worked. This was not a desperate last stand. This was an execution. "Sir, we are losing ships faster than I can count." The tactical officer's voice was breaking with panic. "They are not just destroying our vessels, they are targeting specific systems. Command ships first, then communications relays, then weapons platforms." Vextar watched the tactical display as red symbols representing Coalition losses spread across the screen like a plague. The humans were not just winning this battle, they were demonstrating complete superiority in every aspect of warfare. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "Jupiter's moons are launching something." On the main screen, they could see massive objects rising from the surfaces of Europa, Ganymede, and Io. They looked like rockets, but their trajectories were wrong for missiles. "What are those?" Korvash demanded. The answer came as the objects reached the Coalition fleet and began to unfold. They were not weapons. They were nets. Massive electromagnetic nets that wrapped around Coalition ships and dragged them out of formation. Ships that had been coordinating their defense suddenly found themselves isolated and helpless. "They are hurting us," Vextar realized aloud. "Separating our formations so they can destroy us piece by piece." Admiral Chen's face appeared on the screen again. "Coalition fleet, this is your final opportunity to surrender. We have no desire to commit genocide, but we will defend our system." Korvash, his face twisted with rage and humiliation, screamed at the screen. "Never. We will fight to the last ship." Admiral Chen nodded sadly. "I was afraid you would say that." That was when the humans showed their true power. Every human ship in the system suddenly fired simultaneously, not at Coalition vessels, but at empty space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire Sol system became a weapon. The concentrated energy from thousands of human ships had been fired into a carefully calculated pattern around the local star. Solar flares erupted from the sun's surface, guided by gravitational fields that the humans had somehow learned to control. The flares swept across the system like the hand of an angry god, overwhelming coalition shields and frying electronic systems. In less than 10 minutes, 90% of the coalition fleet was either destroyed or disabled. As Vextar watched his civilization's greatest military force burn around him, he finally understood the truth about humanity. They were not just apex predators. They were apex predators who had learned to use stars as weapons. Vextar floated in the emergency pod, one of less than 1,000 coalition survivors from a fleet that had numbered 10,000 ships just hours before. His pod drifted among the wreckage of the greatest military force the galaxy had ever assembled, now reduced to twisted metal and scattered debris around Sol system. The humans had stopped firing. That simple fact was somehow more terrifying than the battle itself. The surviving coalition vessels were defenseless, their shields down, their weapons offline. The human fleet could have finished them in minutes. Instead, the sleek human warships held position at a respectful distance, their weapons powered down, but ready. A gentle vibration through the pod's hull told Vextar that something had docked with his escape vessel. Emergency atmosphere hissed as the airlock cycled, and then the pod door opened to reveal a human in military uniform. The soldier was young, with the kind of calm confidence that came from absolute victory. He helped Vextar out of the cramped pod and into what was clearly a human rescue ship. Other coalition survivors were already there, receiving medical attention from human personnel. "Commander Vextar?" the young human asked, consulting a tablet. "I am Lieutenant Martinez. Admiral Chen requests your presence on the flagship." Vextar nodded weakly. His injured leg had been damaged further during the battle, and he was grateful for the support as Martinez helped him to the transport shuttle. The ride to the human flagship gave Vextar his first close look at human technology since Kepler 442. The shuttle was clean, efficient, and obviously built with combat in mind. But more importantly, it incorporated design elements from at least 6 different coalition species, improved and refined beyond the original specifications. The humans had not just copied coalition technology, they had perfected it. The flagship was even more impressive. As they approached the massive vessel, Vextar could see weapon systems that made coalition dreadnoughts look primitive. But the ship was not just a weapon. It was a statement. The humans had built something that surpassed the best the galaxy had to offer, and they had done it in 3 years. Admiral Sarah Chen was waiting for him in what appeared to be a conference room. She stood as he entered, a gesture of respect that surprised him. Other coalition survivors were already seated around a large table, all looking stunned and defeated. "Commander Vextar," Admiral Chen said, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "I have read your reports from Kepler 442. Your tactical analysis was quite accurate." Vextar stared at her. "You have read coalition military reports?" "We have read everything," Chen replied matter-of-factly. "Your communication networks are quite easy to access once you understand the encryption patterns. Please, sit. We have much to discuss." As Vextar settled into his chair, Admiral Chen activated a holographic display that showed the current state of Sol system. The wreckage of the coalition fleet floated in neat, organized fields. Human ships moved among the debris, obviously conducting salvage operations. "Let me be clear about your situation," Chen began, her voice calm and professional. "Your fleet has been destroyed. Your surviving personnel are our prisoners. However, you will not be treated as prisoners of war, because we are not interested in war." She gestured to the display, and it zoomed out to show the entire galaxy. "For centuries, your coalition has maintained order through superior technology and overwhelming force. Species that submitted were absorbed. Species that resisted were conquered. It was an effective system." The display highlighted various star systems, showing the expansion of coalition territory over time. "We studied your methods carefully," Chen continued, "and we realized that you operate under a simple principle. Might makes right. The strongest species rules, and the weak submit or die. Is this accurate?" Admiral Korvash, looking broken and defeated, nodded slowly. Yes, it has always been this way. Then you will understand what has changed, Chen said. As of today, humanity is the strongest species in the galaxy. We have just demonstrated that we can destroy your greatest military force while barely sustaining losses. By your own logic, this makes us the new authority in galactic affairs. The coalition survivors exchanged glances, clearly grappling with the implications. Vextar found his voice first. What do you want from us? Admiral Chen smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Vextar's skin crawl. Not cruelty, but absolute certainty. We want you to deliver a message. The display changed again, now showing detailed recordings of the recent battle. Every coalition ship destroyed, every tactical failure, every moment of human superiority was documented in perfect detail. You will return to coalition space, Chen explained. You will show these recordings to your leadership. You will explain exactly what happened here. And you will deliver our terms. Terms? Admiral Korvash asked, his voice barely a whisper. Earth and all human colonies are now under human protection. Any attempt to interfere with human activities in any star system will result in human fleets visiting coalition worlds. We will not limit ourselves to military targets. The threat was delivered in the same calm, professional tone that Chen had used throughout the meeting. That somehow made it more terrifying than if she had been shouting, "You cannot hold the entire galaxy hostage." One of the other coalition survivors protested. There are billions of inhabited worlds. Trillions of sentient beings. We are not holding anyone hostage, Chen replied. We are simply explaining the new reality. Humanity claimed the stars, not through conquest, but through the understanding that we belong here. Anyone who challenges that claim will discover what happens when apex predators stop pretending to be prey. She stood and moved to the viewport, looking out at the wreckage floating in space. Your coalition conquered species through superior technology. We are offering you the chance to coexist through mutual respect. Choose wisely. Vextar stared at the human admiral, finally understanding the true scope of what had happened. You could have destroyed our entire fleet without leaving any survivors, but you chose to let some of us live. Of course, Chen replied. Dead messengers cannot deliver warnings. The implications of that statement settled over the coalition survivors like a cold weight. They were not prisoners or refugees. They were a message, a living demonstration of human power and human mercy, sent back to show the galaxy what had changed. As they were escorted to transport ships for the journey back to coalition space, Vextar reflected on the conversation. The humans were offering coexistence, but on their terms. The galaxy could accept humanity as the new apex predators, or face the consequences. Looking back at Sol System as their transport departed, Vextar saw human exploration fleets launching toward distant stars, ships designed not for conquest but for expansion, carrying the same message that Earth itself now broadcast to the galaxy. We are humanity. We claimed the stars not through conquest, but through the simple understanding that we belong here. Challenge that claim at your own peril. The coalition had tried to absorb another prey species into their empire. Instead, they had awakened something that would fundamentally reshape galactic civilization. The age of coalition dominance was over. The age of humanity had begun. As the transport ship entered hyperspace, carrying its cargo of survivors back to coalition territory, Vextar wondered how long it would take for the other species to accept the new reality. Some would adapt quickly. Others would resist and face the same fate as the fleet floating in Sol System. But eventually, they would all learn the same lesson that Vextar had tried to teach the Council months ago. When apex predators decide to stop hiding their true nature, the only intelligent response is to get out of their way. The galaxy was about to receive a very thorough education in what that meant.